Hi, I'm Katya, and I'm the second negative speaker, and I have two workability arguments and three disadvantage arguments. My first workability argument is that renewable contracts are not practicable in large environments. My first subpoint being that the process, effort, workload, and time taken to negotiate, look at portfolios, and redo each contract for teachers will just simply burden the system. There's a false notion that renewable contracts will give will give principals the fluidity and ease to fire more inefficient teachers, but this is false because, like any large institute, it is unlikely to fire many teachers. Jesse Rothstein, Obama administration economist, expert of quality of instruction in public schools, states, even if you give principals the freedom to fire lots of teachers, they won't do it very often because they know the alternative is worse. My second subpoint being that it's also difficult to renew and formulate these contracts to be efficient to begin with. Rothstein continues to reiterate that the one thing that I would add is that these decisions about how to change teacher contracts are complicated policy decisions. It's really hard to see how a court is going to be well situated to think through how do we do a trade-off to get rid of bad teachers versus attracting and retaining people who might be good. Currently, tenure is the only system intact that is efficient enough and offers the structure to have a fluid school year to year, and offers the adequate protection for academic freedom for teachers in order to go through due process and protect them from arbitrary dismissal. My second workability argument is that granting teachers these dream bonuses or higher salaries are just not possible because we barely have funding to cover current costs of our public schools. My first subpoint being that we have no means to conjure up this money. After the recession, along with political and legal difficulties of raising taxes and revenue, it is very unlikely that the school budget will be able to raise significant additional revenue through taxes. Yes, we could revert funds from other services to the school budget, but this would only harm other services such as police and fire protection. Ultimately, and not only this, but my second subpoint being that not only are we unable to raise revenue, but governments are continually cutting back on fundings for schools. The Center on Budget Policy Priority states that more than 2/3 of states are providing less per student from K through 12 education in 2014 than they did in 2008, which means that we're funding schools less now than we did during the recession. If we're barely able to fund schools now, then how are we able to raise money to take it back to where it was before, let alone get enough money to give these teachers bonuses? It's just not possible. And Tenure is the only system intact able to offer benefits such as protecting academic freedom in order to counteract the working conditions of low-funded schools that teachers have to be in. My first disadvantage argument is that term contracts will cause teachers anxiety because it is like a never-ending probation period. My first subpoint being that it will make teachers less effective by hurting their morale and lack of community and security and consistency in the school. Data by the New York City Department of Education shows that on average, teachers that were extended tenure and kept on contract were 13% less effective than the average teacher, and 38% less effective than those who were approved tenure. Tenure obviously gives teachers a certain morale and protection and comfort to practice academic freedom, which is my second subpoint, that contracts don't offer the same procedural or substantive protection for it. And teachers will be in anxiety, afraid that they will be removed for what they will say or their teaching methods. Erwin Cherminsky, a Legion Lex professor of law, says, even more importantly, under the law, the government may act against an employee because of his or her speech if it demonstrates that on balance, the expression interfered with the efficient functioning of the office. Under this approach, the university's interests outweigh the faculty members' interest in academic freedom. With contracts, the school always has the upper hand, and they are not offered the protective due process that tenure offers. And academic freedom is an essential to quality education, and teachers that aren't able to freely practice it will detrimentally harm our school's education system. My second disadvantage argument is that abolishing tenure will discourage teachers to enter the workforce and encourage current teachers to exit. My first subclaim being that teaching is already an unattractive profession. Center on Budget Policy Priorities shows that teaching that as of August 2013, $324,000 jobs had been cut since 2008. And the BLS reports that the median annual salary for high school teachers was only about $55,000, with the bottom 10% being $37,000. That's basically nothing in this day and age, and teachers are compensating low pay with the protection of academic freedom in their job. Which brings me to my second sub-point, that tenure is important for current teachers, and without it, they would not feel comfortable in the workforce and could look to private institutes that are paying more. The Goodwin-Simon strategic survey that surveyed public school teachers said that 81% said that tenure is important to them personally, and 55% worked at a school where tenure protected an effective teacher from dismissal. Without this, they won't feel the security that it provides, and with a low-paying job and no security, then it is more likely for turnover to exist. Which brings me to my last sub-point, that this is a huge disadvantage because there's already a shortage of teachers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that between 2008 and 2018, the nation must hire an additional 0.5 million teachers. But there are no teachers because people are being discouraged to pursue teaching, and because of the salary, and now without tenure, it would completely harm the system and our education. My last disadvantage argument is that teachers are vulnerable to biased firing and hiring if they don't have tenure. My sub-claim being that what would stop a school from firing a high-paying teacher on top of tenure instead of what would stop a school from hiring a high-paying teacher on top of tenure, then replace them with a new teacher that costs less? Nothing. Which proves that there's disinvestment in our school's education system. The AAUP's 2009 reports on the economic status of the profession that the erosion of the tenure track rests on the fundamentally flawed premise that faculty represent only a cost rather than the institute's primary resource. Tenure teaching is the best system in place to protect academic freedom, give an attractive quality to teaching, and all and any other alternatives are inferior to it and not plausible to carry out. The disadvantages of not having a public school system with tenure will overwhelm any positive attributes.